Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome to each and every person who decided to come and check out this YouTube channel and this YouTube video. My name is Terrance White, and this is White Raiment, the podcast. Now this podcast, before I get into it, I just wanted to mention that this podcast is a Christian-based podcast. Um, Basically dealing with how to overcome sin, of course, how to be productive in your Christian life, how to love Jesus, how to grow more spiritually in your walk with Jesus, and things of that nature. Um, I'm not gonna just say that it's only about those things, but you know, not to blanket statement everything, but it's regarding those things. Those things are a part of this podcast. So if you are looking, if you are willing, if you are wanting to be closer to Jesus, I believe this is the podcast for you. I myself am going through, my own Christian walk, so to speak. And I'm learning day by day how to be uh, a follower of Christ, how to be a follower, how to be a son, how to be a child, as the Bible mentions us being children of the Most High God and the King. And, you know, there's a lot of things that I personally went through in my life that I, of course, can share with you guys with hopes of those experiences and those challenges and those joys, those sorrows, all of those things, possibly giving you encouragement or even helping you learn how to stay away from certain things, right? Because my examples and my failures can be your triumphs. And that I believe is what the Christian journey is about. It's about you sharing your experiences. Actually, in fact, we haven't even gotten into the podcast yet, and a verse just came to my mind. Just dealing with the Christian experience, and just overcoming in general, um, and it pertains to this podcast itself. So I think it's fitting. The Bible says in Revelation chapter 3 and verse 5. Notice what the Bible says. It says in Revelation chapter 3 and verse 5, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Man, very powerful verse. And it's one of the reasons why I chose for my podcast to be called White Raiment. The other reason is, of course, my last name, which is White. So it goes hand in hand. It works. All right. So yeah, but overcoming is something that each and every one of us has to be able to say that we can achieve, or not even say that we can achieve. It's something that each and every one of us has to achieve, if we are planning on making it to heaven. Overcoming is a big deal, a big part of the Christian walk. In fact, dare I say, overcoming is probably like 99%. 99% of the Christian walk is overcoming. And I mean, I can't say 99%. Of course, that's a overstatement, but at the same time, overcoming is what's needed to get over ourselves. We have faulty characters. The Bible mentions in the book of Genesis And of course, everyone knows this. It's one of the stories that everyone knows, Adam and Eve, and they're falling into temptation from Satan in the Garden of Eden. But our overcoming is essential. Our overcoming is everything. Apart from, overcoming is everything, but then, there are other things that are everything as well. Jesus Christ is everything. He should be everything to us. The Father should be everything. His Spirit should be everything. Those three individuals, those three separate beings, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, those three should be everything to us. And all in the same time, they are everything, but overcoming is also everything. In fact, Jesus is the main reason why we can overcome, right? Victory over sin. Jesus was the reason why we can have that victory, his example. And, and I'm thankful for it, because there's a lot of things, even with me growing up, a lot of things that had happened throughout my life that, even dwelling on it now, I can just consider how God was in every single moment of my life, the goods and the bads. And you can appreciate the fact that his overcoming didn't stop at his life alone, right? His overcoming, what he did when he walked the earth, not only was it a far cry to the future, but it was also something to look forward to in the present for us. Because I know when I wake up, I maybe not, I didn't used to think like this before, but now I do. Seeing that I'm drawing closer and nearer to God and his Son. But when I wake up, I want to be able to overcome those things that have the mastery over me. And, I'm just beginning to kind of settle into this idea and this lifestyle, so to speak. I've done it before, of course. I've done it before. It's not like it's new to me. But, before I was able to do it for quite some time, right? I was able to do it for quite a while. But then sin creeps in. Sin creeps its ugly head in, and, you just fall. And not to say that we're not going to fall, even though that's the goal. The goal is, of course, us not falling ever again. But sin is the Bible even mentions sin being, I think it's Paul that mentions his sin being almost like a thorn in the flesh, right? So the thorn, if you go to pick a flower or go to a rose bush and you try to go for the rose, or you try to grab the rose and try to hold it, and you get pricked with the thorn, right? And then that thorn sticks, or it stays in your finger. Something like that, it does something to your mind, right? You're going to think about how much the thorn hurts, because it's not just a prick and that's it. It's a prick. Blood gets drawn, right? You're open. Your wound is open. You have blood dripping. You have pain receptors telling you that this hurts a lot. There's so many things. So sin is just like that. I think Paul says a messenger from Satan. I got to go to the verse, man, because I don't want to butcher it. Let me see if I can find the verse. Let me see if I can find the verse. But yeah, thorn in the flesh. Let's see. Okay, got it. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. It says, unless I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. So it makes me consider what sin really is, right? A messenger from Satan, or those things that we're not able to get the victory over are basically messengers from Satan. And why do I say messengers? Because they can't talk. The thorn can't talk. But the thorn does remind you, right? The sin does remind you. See, man, I'm getting too deep into this podcast. I didn't even really introduce myself. I have to introduce myself properly and kind of give a backstory before I dive deep in. I already dove deep in, but let me just try and do it the right way. My name is Terrance. Terrance White. I live in Lancaster, California. I'm 35 years old. I got a wife, beautiful wife, and 2 beautiful daughters. I'll probably mention some more about them in some later podcasts, you know. But so yeah. And as far as my history is concerned, I was raised in a church. My mother, she would take me and my brothers, my mother and father, they would often take us to church. We were raised Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists, that is. And we were raised in a church, not really knowing too much of the love of Christ and the love of the Father and the love of the Spirit. Not too much. I mean, you know, there's the things that everyone knows. John 3:16, right? Everyone knows John 3:16, and that was kind of our paddle boat, so to speak. That was the thing that just kept us afloat and kept us moving down the river, that John 3:16. Because it's so common and everyone knows about the verse. And I would think what the verse is meant to be for the world. But, you know, God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. And that was, for me, that was what introduced me to Jesus and to God the Father. Actually, I can't even say to God the Father either. Growing up as a youth, I just remember when there was mention of Jesus, it was in the sense that there wasn't anyone else, right? Which, you know, not necessarily a bad thing, but there are 2 other persons of the Godhead, as the Bible mentions, that should be acknowledged, right? So when I grew up with my siblings, Jesus was the only one there. And I don't know why that was. Maybe I just didn't catch something from the pastor or the minister. Maybe the minister didn't mention anything about any other person, or maybe, you know, like I said, maybe it was me. Maybe I just didn't catch on to certain things. And I just always, when I would pray to Jesus and get on my knees, pray to Jesus. And he was a personal friend to me at a young age, a very young age. I can't remember the age. So don't ask me because I don't know. But at a very young age, Jesus was a personal friend. And I'm talking about when I would walk down the street or when I would go to a friend's house or go to wherever, I would talk to him. Just talk to him, whether it be by my mind, just, in my mind, I'm talking to him, or orally, just randomly out of nowhere, I would talk to him and just, friend type conversations with Jesus. Even though I didn't never seen him, right? Don't know him. I just, because of the John 3:16 and just I don't know what's the word for it. I want to say the commonality of it, but I know that's not a word. It should be, because, it fits. But just how common John 3:16 is in the world and the teaching of it, and just believing that there is a person that died for you, and taking hold of that belief, that was all I had, right? Of course, I was a terrible child. I was very, very evil, to say the least. I was very bad, very bad. If my mother was here right now, she'd let you know how bad I was. But nonetheless, I was raised in a very good family. My father, I had a good life. I'll just say it that way. Good father. My mother was a good mother. They both took care of the family very well. We had our ups and downs, as any family or household would have. And Jesus was a friend to me, a personal friend. And it may seem really weird or far-fetched, that someone can just befriend. I mean, nowadays we may hear that and say, oh, he was a friend. Well, praise God that he was a friend, because we need more of that now in these days. But back then, it kind of seemed like it was kind of like a cliche, I guess you could say, where it's like, oh, Jesus is your friend? Okay, all right, sure he is. That type of thing, like that. But and I was a bad child, very bad. I used to do very bad things. And I do remember, and I find this worthy to mention, and I'm thinking that this was the first time that I actually took Jesus as a friend, or made him a personal friend to me. And this is one of the earliest memories that I can remember of me in my childhood years. This is in the middle school phase. So in middle school, there was, we had this guy who was considered the bully of the school. We all have our bullies, but this guy was considered the bully of the school. And I remember one day we were getting ready to leave for the day, right? School was over. We were getting ready to leave. And I had this very genius idea to taunt the bully of our school, seeing that we were almost going to be out, or actually it was time to go out, time to go home, right? And we used to walk home, me and my older brother. So the bell had rung and we were getting ready to leave. I had seen the school bully at a distance, and as I'm walking out of the gate, the bully is still within the gate. So I have a head start to get away from him, right? This is the only reason why I would taunt the bully, is because I have a head start and I'm essentially going to get away. because he has to come all the way around the gate to come and get me, right? So this was my logic. And so I ended up leaving the gate, and the idea came and popped in my mind. You should say something to that bully, and kind of like to get the best of him, and be brave. And even though it wasn't brave at all, but I felt brave because I can say something to him and get away and be successful. That was how I thought. So I had left my middle school, or left the gate, and I was heading home. My brother is already ahead of me, walking down the street, out of the gate, down the street, ready to cross the street light. And I'm walking, or I'm getting ready to run, but walking out of the gate, I hit the corner and I yell out to the bully. I don't even remember what I said, but I remember it was to the degree of, "You big stupid head." That's what I said. I think that's what it was. "You big stupid head," something. And I felt proud when I said that. And he seen me, and he's like looking at me like, and I don't know if he was gonna come after me or not. All I know is I took off running. As soon as I said it, I took off running. The only thing is, I ran across the street. So I'm not running on the sidewalk. I thought to myself, if I'm going to get away from him, I need the gate to keep us separate, and I need the street to keep us apart from each other as well. So he has a barrier from the gate, and he has to cross the street to come and get me. And I'm running. And I have a head start. So there's multiple things on my side is what I'm thinking. But so I run across the street, and as soon as I get to the middle of the street, boom, I get hit by a car. And the miraculous thing about it is, when it happened, I don't remember anything other than running across the street, or trying to run across the street, and then waking up on the side of the curb where I just left the sidewalk from, right? So I don't remember anything other than waking up, getting up, or actually I was being woken up from the lady who had hit me with the car. And of course, I didn't do my due diligence to look across the street, but I was hit by the car. I can only assume that I flew up in the air, but because from what I remember, where I was hit, it was towards the middle of the street. So that's quite a distance. You have the sidewalk, you have cars parked alongside the sidewalk, and then you have the middle of the street. So from the middle of the street all the way to the sidewalk was where I landed. And I was woken up by it was a lady that had gotten out of her car and come to make sure that I was okay. She's like, "Oh, are you all right? I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Are your bones, just making sure that I was okay." And I got up and I told her I'm okay. I think I dust myself off or something like that. And I just headed towards my brother, who was already across the street. So I ran towards him, crossed the street, and just walked home with him like nothing happened. And it was miraculous because when it happened, you know how people get hit by cars is very tragic. The videos you see nowadays of people getting hit by a car, but when I got hit by a car, I felt nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. I didn't even know. She woke me up, asking me, was I okay? So I assumed something happened, but I have no recollection of what happened. I just know I ran across the street and I woke up on the sidewalk and someone's asking me, am I okay? With the car stopped in the middle of the road. So, two and two together. And but the miraculous thing was that I felt nothing at all. Zero. No pain. I walked all the way home. And glory be to God. Because, of course, without a shadow of a doubt, his angels was there to protect me. And, you hear about Jesus and you hear about his love for you. But when you look back at things like that and you just ponder and realize that what other explanation is there for you being hit by a car that was speeding down the street? I don't know if it was speeding. I won't say it was speeding, but it was going fast. Because, again, I was from the middle of the street to the sidewalk, back to the sidewalk. So I had to have flown a great distance back. But to be hit by something, and not to mention, I was running towards the middle of the street. So you have two separate momentums colliding toward each other. But just to think about it and to realize that God was protecting me the whole time, his angels was keeping me safe the whole time, it's a power. It's definitely a power. And it makes me consider myself dear, extremely dear to him, for what he's done in my life. That's only one occasion. I can mention multiple different occasions and different things that I've went through and gone through, which I most likely will in some other episodes, of course. But I count it all a blessing just to be able to look back on things like that and just realize that the relationship that I have with Jesus is grand. It's a very dear thing to have. And the reason why I tell the story is because this again was something that brought my attention to Jesus. I would hear about him and you don't really think that he's real, right? You hear about him and you consider it and say, okay, all right, a God, someone who's up in the sky watching over you, okay. But then when you have those types of situations, you can't help but to believe, right? At least that's how I felt. I couldn't help but to believe that Jesus is real. And so I went home that day. We walked all the way home, no pain in my legs or body or anything, no broken bones. I get home, I head upstairs, I go to my mom in her room, and I tell her, Mom, and I just fall to my knees and say, I was hit by a car today. And of course, my mom is distraught, and she's, typical mother whose child just got hit by a car. But, I told her, and then afterward, she asked me, was I okay? And I told her I was fine. Went to my room, and that was it. But how many others can say the same thing? How many others have children at that? have gone or ran straight across the street without being aware of their surroundings or looking both ways, as they say, and survived it? How many have gone the same direction as I have gone in my past, as regarding, getting hit by a car? How many have been in the same and similar situation and cannot live to tell about it? Or let me rephrase it. How many have gone through a similar situation and are not living to tell about it? I think that's a better way to put it forth. There's millions, tons of people who've been hit by a car, maybe at slower speeds than I got hit, and they're not here to tell about it. And you always hear about counting your blessings. And I don't have enough hands and toes to do that. Of course, we have so many different situations that we have gone through where the only thing that will be able to fit it is a novel, right? Only thing we could have that would allow us to fit all of the countless times that God has been there for us would have to be a novel. It will have to be another Bible. And I'm just blabbering. I'm just blabbering on. But I'm grateful that God has been faithful unto me. And I thank him for it. And so that's kind of my past on me growing to know Jesus and getting to know him, of course, throughout my adult years. And so also, just as I was growing up into the church, we went to a church in Compton, California. And, we had our youth groups and our different things that we did with each other. But one thing that happened with me and my brother, my older brother, the one that I was mentioning in the car accident. One thing that happened with us in our experiences in the church was kind of shows that we didn't know as much as we should have known about Jesus and his love, is that when we were in church, we began to write lyrics. We had a little notebook that we had, and we would bring a pen, and as we would sit down and listen to the sermon, we would just jot down in this notebook rap lyrics, right? We would just write our own rap lyrics. And of course, something that shouldn't be done in church, but this is something that we did and didn't really receive no backlash for. And this is not to discredit anyone, not to say the pastor, my mother, my father, this is not to point the finger or discredit anyone. This is something that we chose to do. But again, we were bad children. Not bad, but bad. So we would write lyrics in church, thinking, that we were going to be some famous hip hop stars and rappers, and we cherished the hip hop genre a lot. And we, so much so that we met a few people there at the church, a few other dear friends that we used to hang out with. And we decided to start our own rap group in the church, which is, it sounds terrible because it is terrible. Us starting a rap group in church. And we were writing down curse lyrics, profanities, all kinds of stuff, things that we never did in our in our regular lives, drugs or anything like that. We never did anything to that degree or held firearms or anything, but the influence from the music was what drove us, to portray a character that we did. These gangsters. So we would do that on and on and on and on every single Sabbath. We would come Sabbath, or church wasn't a delight because Jesus was being preached. It was a delight because we can go there, see our friends, and write rap lyrics, profanities. We did freestyles. We would battle each other, and then outside of church, we would go to each other's homes and make music and record songs, and we grew. Our love grew for those things in the church. Which is sad to say. It's very sad to say. But we knew no better. We were children. We didn't really get rebuked as we should have. But these things were, I believe, I would say that these things were stepping stones. Not in a good sense. And it's, like, oh, these are stepping stones. We're getting better at our rap lyrics, or we're getting better at our songs, or what have you. I believe they were stepping stones for me to consider if Jesus was really my friend or not. If I had a personal relationship with the Savior or not. And again, as I look back and think about it, it just shows me how God has been there from the worst times and the good times, but from the worst times to the worstest, if that's a word, the worstest times. He was there for me. And it's just beautiful to think about it, because the Bible mentions many different things of Jesus being there for us. But do we actually consider those things? Do we actually think about it and say, man, the Bible is actually telling the truth? The Bible is real. Jesus did say he would be there for me if I had called out for him in this moment. Jesus did say he would bless me if I had asked him in this moment. And there's plenty of those I can mention, but do we actually consider that? Do we look back and say, man, Jesus actually came through on his word? Whatever he said, it came to pass. And I think that's something that we need to think of a lot more. If we consider ourselves lovers of Christ, of course, because his word that's all we got is his word, and he stands on his word, which is great for us, because we can trust that it's going to be done in due time, as long as we have patience. And so, I've grown up in the church. Never really knew of a lot of the truths that I know now, simply because my life wasn't aligned with Jesus. I would go to church and do churchy things, but I wasn't following Jesus. I knew about Jesus. I would talk to him off and on, kind of like the friend that you used to talk to every day, but now, You miss a few days, and then it's like every so often you might text them or see how they're doing. And it was our relationship was like that. So fast forward, I forget what happened, but as we're growing up in the church, there's certain things, certain prophecies, I should say, that it was taught to us in the church back in Compton. Certain prophecies that were taught to us that, we didn't really pay no mind to. We just consider them just preacher talk, something that they have to say to get through their sermon. They're just mentioning that to get through the sermon. We even got books. We got books of these certain prophecies. Never read them, but the title of the books would always stick with us. And there came a time when on the news, the news had broadcasted something pertaining this particular prophecy that we had got books for and we knew about. So the prophecy that the book was explaining was coming to pass on television right before our eyes. And when I seen that, I was terrified. If I'm being honest, I was terrified. I said, what? Didn't they used to talk about this? Wasn't this a book that they used to pass and we used to always hear about but never read? And from that very moment, my eyes were open. And I won't say genuinely, right? My eyes were open because I was afraid that I was not going to make it to heaven because of this prophecy of being fulfilled. So it was me being afraid, which led me to run to Jesus, right? And now that I look at it, I see it as something that I'm grateful for it. Because it showed me my need. It showed me that my life was wretched. My life was miserable. And I was without shelter, I guess you could say, as the Bible mentions. I didn't have a shelter for the storm that was headed toward this world. And so because of that, I ended up seeking to fellowship with my older brother, who I didn't mention before. I have 3 brothers. I have a younger brother and 2 older brothers. But my oldest brother used to do coal portering. We will see him every now and then. Every time we seen him, we will be happy. It was almost like Malcolm in the Middle, if you know what I'm talking about. So he was like, I think the oldest brother name was Francis. And that's how our older brother was to us. He would sometimes he would be at college, and other times he would be, I believe, coal portering with other ministers that are now pastors. Or I should say with other brethren that are now pastors or ministers. And so, every now and then he would come and we would be so happy to see him because we wouldn't see him for quite long periods of time or breaks in time. And come to find out that he actually is a pastor of his own church, right? So he's a pastor of his own church. And I'm skipping a lot of in-between stories and stuff like that, but I'm trying to give you the the gist of it. And so I think it was my mother who had told us that he had his own church and he was pastoring the church in Pasadena. And so, me, my wife at the time, I was married. Me, my wife, and my children, we decided to go and visit his church, just to visit and fellowship, I guess, just to see how it is. Thinking that it's going to be the same as it was back when I was at my old church in Compton. Very, very watered down, to say the least. It's one of those, back then it felt like one of those prosperity gospels where God is good, God loves you, God is Lord, God is King, and don't do bad, don't do this, don't do that. God is love, God is love, God is this, God is that. Jesus is Lord, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it was always the same message in a different wrapping, if you understand what I'm saying. So it's like you go to Chipotle. And I'm hungry right now. That's why I'm mentioning Chipotle. You go to Chipotle and you ask for a burrito. And you get a regular burrito. And then, or you tell them to make me something nice. Let's put it that way. You tell the guy, the burrito specialist, make me something nice. That's good. And he makes you a good burrito, right? You go and eat it. Okay, it's good. It's okay. It's an okay burrito. You come back the next day or the next week even. You say, all right, make me something nice again. Something new and nice. He says, okay. He makes you up a burrito. You go to eat it. Tastes the same as the burrito last week. Okay, maybe he didn't hear what I told him when I asked him to make me something nice. Maybe I should add an exclamation mark when I say it next time. So you go in next week to the Chipotle place. See the same person. It's the same guy. And you say, hey man, you mind spicing up the burrito this time? Kind of like do something else with it, if you don't mind. Add a little bit of that in there and add a little bit of this. He said, oh, sure, of course. He goes through the line, makes the burrito. You go to eat the burrito. It's the same burrito. Same burrito. He might have marked something different on the burrito. He might have put a G for guac in it. But it's the same burrito, right? Maybe it might have been a little bit of lemon in it to make it a little bit different. But it's the same burrito. That's how it was at my old church. It was to the point where every single Sabbath, there was no conviction. I had no convictions. We would be, as I mentioned before, we would be in the back row writing lyrics in the rap books. And we would look up, time and time again, look up as the pastor is preaching, because once we write our own, or say it's my turn and I got the book, they give me the book and I have my pencil, I'm writing down my lyrics. Once I'm done with my lyrics, I pass it to the next person so he can write his, and we just go off of each other's lyrics. So if you end with the word fantastic, then I'm going to start or end my bar. If you know what that is, I'll end my bar with something that rhymes with fantastic and move on. That's how we used to do it. And so when we didn't have the book, we would have time to look up and see what the pastor is talking about. So we would look up. Okay. And it was just curse words, rap lyrics, everything. We just listening to the sermon with no conviction. And you know, it was just terrible. I'm not saying that sermon was terrible. I'm saying that our condition was terrible to the point where we can hear, Jesus loves you. Jesus doesn't want you to sin. Jesus doesn't want you to, and still we would do everything that the pastor was preaching against, right? And there was other things, of course, other things that happened in the church that would make us, or it wouldn't impress us to do the right thing. So when we would look at the example, whether it be the pastor, whether it be the elders, whether it be the deacons, or whoever it may be, we didn't have an example to go off of. What do I mean? The example that is being preached should be the example that is lived. If it's not the example that is lived, then it doesn't matter if you preach it or not. Whoever is listening to it won't go by that. They won't abide by that because the example is not what's being preached. Or the shortest way to say that, practice what you preach. Everybody always says that. And everyone knows the term. Everyone knows the phrase. Practice what you preach. But who is really living or who is really practicing what they preach? If your life is not according to the divine nature or the divine similitude, if your life is not according to the life of Jesus, who was practicing what he preached, then why preach, right? Why preach? Because then it goes into the aspect of what are you doing it for, right? And you know exactly where your mind will go after that. What are you doing it for? Is it for, and I don't even have to say it because you know what I'm going to say, right? That's the next thing. That's the next thing that comes to mind. If this is not for Jesus, or if this is not, if there's no desire or no determination to live what's being preached, then what is it for? Exactly. What is it for? So there was a lot of things that went on in my life growing up, trying to seek after Jesus. And I got to get back to my point because I can go on and on. But so we go to my older brother's church, and I'm thinking it's gonna be the same thing. Jesus loves you. Make sure you don't sin, and we're gonna get through the storm together. And it's gonna be a hard life. It's a rough road. Jesus died on the cross. He paved the way. Make sure that you be good today and listen to your parents, because Jesus listened to his Father, that type of thing. Where it's like, I know exactly what you're going to say because it's been said over and over. I'm sure the old church that I used to go to in Compton is that's not the only church that's preaching the same type of message. That Chipotle burrito that's wrapped in different wrapping maybe has a little bit of lemon in it. So, you get a little twist in the message. And when we sat down and heard what was being taught, it just blew our minds. It blew our minds. It's hard to explain it. You would have had to have been there, but all the years that I was at this other church, all those years, whatever I learned, let's just say it that way, whatever I learned, be it if it wasn't much or whatever I learned, as soon as I got to my older brother's church and heard the message there, it's like it trumped all of my years at the other church. One simple message, or not even the message. One, and the Bible has gems, right? For those that don't know, the Bible has a lot of gems, hidden gems. And what I mean by gems is when you go, or when an archaeologist, let's say an archaeologist, or even a gold miner, goes into their respective area of work, and they dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, and they brush and brush and dig and dig and brush, and they find the gold. Once the gold has surfaced, just the very fact that they were able to locate it, and the work that was put in, and the different techniques, and just them finding the gold and showing you the gold in and also by them showing you the gold, their experience behind searching for the gold, or the archaeologists and their whatever, the bones or the shells or whatever, it showed me that there was levels, right? And I know we hear this often on TV and on YouTube, and especially in the sports industry. There's levels. There's levels to this. And not a lot of people know that. Not a lot of people know that there are levels. There's levels to the gospel. There's levels to the truth. There's levels to the love of God. And too often are we just the world even. Too often is the world focused and searching on the lowest level. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to know. There's a lot more to see. There's a lot more to understand. There's a lot more to learn, to teach, it's just so much more. And it's hard to explain it in just one podcast, which is why there will be multiple episodes of the podcast, of course, so we can dig through those levels and find these things together. But so in that very moment, if I'm not mistaken, there was one thing that was mentioned while we were there. There was one thing that was mentioned that just blew my mind. And this has never been mentioned in all of the years that I was at my other church. Right? And I'm talking about I grew up in the church. And we listened to the sermons, of course. We listened to them. They went out the other ear. Once they came in this ear, they went out the other one. But we did listen to them, right? We heard them. We knew what it was going to be about. This is the thing. I could tell you what the next sermon would be about before we got to the church. And I'm not saying like, oh, it's going to be on this topic. I can tell you what the realm of it is going to be, what the realm of the message would be, because it's the same message, right? It's going to be the same thing. It's just a different burrito or different packaging for the burrito. And it's sad to say that because the truth is very vast. from the understanding that I've grown to know being at my older brother's church. And so there was one thing that he has shown me that it just absolutely blew my mind. I was like, this has got to be some kind of, I don't know, some weird, I don't know. And it almost a little bit terrified me, because all my years being in the church, and never, ever have I seen that. And it's so simple. Something so simple that's there in your face that you can see. And never heard it. No one ever taught it. Never seen it before in my life. What was that thing? In Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20 in verse 8. And this is just a verse dealing with the Sabbath, dealing with the holy day of the Lord. And when another thing is, while we were there at church, this was considered our affirmation of faith. This was something that we would recite every single Sabbath, recite it every single Sabbath. And I'm grateful for it, because it began to impress within my mind, one of the laws of God, or one of the important laws of God. And so, the interesting thing about it is, and in verse 8, I'll just go ahead and read it. Exodus 20 and verse 8. The Bible says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Very powerful commandment. Like I said, every Sabbath we would recite it. This was our affirmation of faith. I knew it by memorization, just because we had to say it every week. Not because I went to the Bible and read it and thought to make it a part of my memory bank. We said it every single week. Recited like the Pledge of Allegiance. I knew this more than the Pledge of Allegiance at my school. And the Pledge of Allegiance, I was happy to recite that. I will be ready to recite that. But this is like, I don't even know what it means. I just know it means that we should rest on the seventh day. That's all I know about it. And mind you, I'm young. This is my young to teenage years when I didn't know any better. And so all this time we're reciting this commandment, this particular commandment. And what was mentioned at this other church that my brother was a pastor of was that the Sabbath day is more than just a day. The Sabbath day is something that maybe not all of Christendom considers. Here's why. Mark chapter 14. Actually, Galatians chapter 4. Let's read Galatians chapter 4. Mark chapter 14 is another way or another verse that shows it, but Galatians chapter 4 says it even better. And it says in Galatians chapter 4, verse 6, Bible says, "And because ye are sons, God hath sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father." Okay. All right, Terrance. What? We don't see it. We don't see it. What did you read the verse for? Well, Abba is the Father's name. Is Christ's Father's name. God the Father, right? Abba. Now, when you take the word Sabbath, write it down. Sabbath. The Father's name is in the middle of the word Sabbath, right? And it doesn't just stop there. There's a lot more wonderful and beautiful truths regarding that particular gem or gold nugget. But the Father's name is in the middle of Sabbath. And there's multiple places in the Bible where it shows that the name represents the character. But God the Father's character, God the Father, his name is in the middle of the Sabbath, or the day that was called holy at the beginning, the seventh day that was blessed and sanctified, because that in it God did no work. That very day was blessed because the Father's name was in it, right? The Holy Father of heaven didn't just give us the Sabbath as a day to rest, but he gave us the Sabbath as a day to reflect upon his name. What about his name? What about it? God's name is, I guess I'm going to have to go to the verse because I don't want to, what's the word? I don't want to belittle the name of the Lord. I don't want to belittle the name of the Lord. So let me go to the verse. But when I seen this, it just blew my mind. It was amazing. I said, how is that? This whole time I've been going to church on the Sabbath and didn't know that the Father's name was in the Sabbath or the Father's character was in the Sabbath. So when you rested on the Sabbath, you were to reflect on his character. What is his character? Exodus chapter 34. Exodus chapter 34. This is after Moses went to go and grab the tables of the testimony, the two commandments, or the two tables of stone, I should say, the two tables of commandments. Verse 1 of Exodus 34. Bible says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, hew thee two tables of stone, like unto the first, and I will write upon these tables the words that were in the first tables, which thou breakest. And be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning unto Mount Sinai, and present thyself there to me in the top of the mount. And no man shall come up with thee, neither let any man be seen throughout all the mount, neither let the flocks nor herds feed before that mount. And he hewed 2 tables of stone like unto the first. And Moses rose up early in the morning and went up unto Mount Sinai, as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hand 2 tables of stone. And the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. So the name of the Lord, right? Abba, Father. Abba is the Father's name. You have Abba, and then you have the Sabbath. Abba in the middle of the name. So whatever he proclaims after the verse I just read, that is a part of his character. That is a part of his name. Remember, the name represents the character. In the book of Matthew, the Bible, I believe it's Matthew, the Bible mentions his name shall be called Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. So what does Jesus mean? Savior. That was going to be his character. That's why his name will be Jesus, because he will have a character that will be willing to save to the uttermost those that perish because of sin, right? So after the verse I just read, whatever it says, that's the character of Abba the Father. Let's read it. It says, verse 5 again, just for clarification, we want to read verse 5 again. Then we'll jump into the name. It says in verse 5 of Exodus 34, and the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed by before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children unto the 3rd and to the 4th generation. Wow. The name of the Lord is mighty and great. Now, there's a few things that was mentioned there in that name. There was multiple things that was mentioned in his name. Things that if those things were without from his character, I don't know where I would be today. Honestly, I don't know where I would be. I didn't tell you a lot of the other things I used to do, right? And I don't have to. But I want you to ponder and consider within your own mind the things that you've done. And if a lot of these things weren't a part of the character of the Father, Abba, where would you be? Where exactly would you be? Actually, a few things to consider in verse 6. Merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. Now, this is another topic, but just the mercy alone is enough for me to just say, wow, I don't even deserve to be here right now. If the Lord wasn't as merciful as he is, I can't even complete the sentence. That's all I can say. If the Lord wasn't as merciful as his name says he is, period, and then just end it right there. And you remember the story I told you regarding the car accident. I wouldn't even be here to be given this to be doing this podcast. But again, the name, that is his character. That is what he is wanting to show us, right? That is what he's wanting to prove to us, that he's merciful, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth. And all of these things, forgiving the iniquity and forgiving sin and transgression, all of those things is what he is wanting to prove to us. The problem is, do we take time out to recognize, right? Do we take time out to recognize his name? Do we take time to recognize Abba? Because Jesus said, because you are a son of Abba, you cry Abba, or you cry out to your father whose character is Exodus 34 verse 5, 6, and 7. You take time, right? What time can you take, or what time do you have to take to do that? What time do we have to do that? I mean, within our busy lives, I don't really got no time, right? We should. A lot of us work 12-hour, 10-hour shifts. Luckily, I don't. But a lot of us work those hours, work those shifts. And afterwards, after we're done with our shift, we're pooped. I think the word is pooped, tired. We don't want to I don't feel like doing anything. I want to rest. I want to eat. I want to sleep. I want to enjoy my time, right? And not realizing that the Bible is calling us to be sons of Abba. What did his son do? What did the beloved son of Abba do? The one that was in the bosom of Abba. What did he do? I wonder if he took time out to actually acknowledge the name or acknowledge the character and his gratefulness. But then again, we did just read the commandment. And the time that was allotted for us to spend time or to acknowledge Abba, it was carved out. That time was carved out for us to acknowledge the Father. And I just thought that was something amazing, right? Powerful, because throughout all my years, never heard anything like that, ever. And this was mentioned, this was like a quick little thing that was found in the Bible on this particular day when we were with my brother's church or fellowshipping with his church. It wasn't like it was a whole sermon about this. It was just a quick thing that he brought out in the Word of God. A quick thing. I'm talking about he just went to maybe 2 or 3 or 4 verses and just brought it out, quick point, and then went on with a different study. I think it was along the same lines, but he went on with something else. And just with that alone, my whole past growing up in the church was trumped. It was overshadowed right? Overshadowed. This is something that just blew my mind. I didn't think that something like this can be found. This was a true gem, a true gold nugget. And after hearing something like that, and I'm pretty sure the sermon that was, that he taught that day was extremely powerful, to say the least. I can't really remember what exactly it was, but I wouldn't doubt it that it was extremely powerful. So much so that me and my wife just desired to begin our fellowship there with him. And ever since, there's been so many different things that we've been learning from the church, which have opened my eyes so much to the point where it makes me want to help those who were in my position. Those who were, and I don't mean, those who were or those who are just living a life of disobedience and sin, and every now and then we'll hear something. I'm talking about those that are actually open, those that are open to hearing and wanting to know the truth. Because there is a truth. There is a truth and there is the truth. And I think the world needs to hear the truth. I think it's owed to each and every one of us to hear the truth, not a truth, right? Because a truth can be anything. It can be yours. It can be his. It can be hers. I believe this. That's a truth because I believe it to be so. I don't want to hear a truth. I want to hear the truth, right? Because only the truth will set us free. There's so many different things that there is to know in the Bible. And I pray that God will give me, even with this podcast, give me the opportunity to share those things with the world and with you guys. So many gold nuggets, so many gems, so many beautiful things to see. And mind-blowing things, to say the least. But I pray that the Lord will continue to help me to reveal those things. I pray that he will reveal them through me as well. As I seek to do more with this podcast. And I thank you for watching. I thank you for attending and being attentive with your ears. I pray that you are willing to know more. The goal is, of course, to overcome sin. The goal is, of course, to overcome ourselves. Because those that will overcome, we read before, they will be clothed in white raiment. Thank you for watching. My name is Terrance. I'll see you guys in the next podcast.